Hi. I love that
Hello.
we're doing this while you're abroad, like rather than on the sofa. Episode 2 is you gallivanting, and I love that.
Um, so, just in case we have any new listeners, my name's Dominique. This is Sabrina, and together we are Ko-Morbid. This session we're going to be talking about is the difficulties that we have experienced within employment. We talk about this all the time, but we just thought we'll share our experiences with our listeners because it might be helpful. It's just nice to share experiences.
Yeah, and I guess the other side of that is it'd be great to hear from anyone who's having kind of similar difficulties and really open this up as like an avenue for a communication piece as well. But it's really interesting thinking about the similarities and the difference of how neurodiversity has meant that we've progressed within our own individual difficulties at work and what that what that looks like and the different types of difficulties that we've come across, and it's been a really interesting journey with this one.
I think my journey with employment has definitely evolved as I've been diagnosed or my challenges have changed. So it just demands a different way of support from my people leaders. Maybe they haven't been challenged in that way before or had to support someone in the way that I need it. I've started to, if I'm going into an interview, telling them that I am neurodivergent and explain to them my neurospices and how those traits are my strengths. But I also highlight the bits that I would need support on and will be my essentially weaknesses, but I don't like to call them that because they're just things that I struggle with that maybe some people find it super easy. And those challenges will be different depending on circumstances. Over the years, I've tended to lean more towards more remote jobs so I can be a little bit mobile for health reasons, but also being in the office is generally quite overwhelming for me. So being somewhere that's a little bit more quieter, that will help me focus and be able to zone in. Though um, I generally tell like in employers or even at the stage of interviews what my needs are. Or I sometimes I don't say what my needs are, but I just say that I am autistic. I do have ADHD and I have autism. I also have some underlying health issues that will require me to have more of a flexible working style, but also not be in the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week. So I set that expectation of the flexibility before I'm even considered, because what I don't want is, and I this is what I've experienced in previously, is I need to have an occupational health assessment because I have needs that needs to be supported. They don't know how to cater or they don't know how to bend. Just in my experience, I just get it all out on the table and I'm not wasting anyone's time.
How's it felt for you when your needs haven't been catered for, and what does that look like?
Um, it's very challenging and it really enforces the imposter syndrome because it makes me feel that I'm not good enough for the role. When I know I am, I'm just struggling with certain things. You feel a little bit alienated, or you feel like you're being a little bit too needy because you're asking for things, but things are not being met, or um, yeah, like your role becomes like 10 times worse if your needs are not being met. I'm going to use the same example as earlier, like finding really overwhelming in the office and it's really noisy, you can't concentrate. Like that really impacts your workload. If you can't hyper focus or you can't just zone out, like a lot of people can just be in a noisy room and work. But when you're sound sensitive, or I wear special lenses that if the room's too bright, then it adjusts my eyes because I'm light sensitive. So before, I never used to have this, and I used to get migraines all the time. And then once you have a migraine, like, you're completely out. So being in a room where the lights are too bright, and you'll find it really overwhelming, and your eyes are hurting, and now your brain's going into like this wild spasm, and you're having a migraine, is not the nicest feeling to have. So, yeah, if your needs are not met, it makes you feel like you're asking for too much, and you're not meant to ask for that because no one else is asking for it. Yeah, so it really impacts your workload, and it makes you look and feel like you are not suitable for the job, capable of the job, and you're not the first person that's on someone's mind when it comes to a promotion or pay rise because you're underperforming.
No, I'm just also thinking about, the intersectionality here of you're a person of color in a female body with neurospiciness. Like, I'm just thinking about what does the bigger impact of all of those things in the workplace, and the positive and negatives of all of those things coming together, and how that feels.
Yeah. And like, I work in tech as well, so it's like it's a very male dominated area, so there's even less females in roles like mine. You're essentially the mouse in the room, going, hey, I need support, in a room full of males with like a very small voice, and you're not always heard.
So I feel like you and I have both been through some quite similar experiences recently where our managers haven't seen value or worth. For me, it was because with my dyslexia, I took a job that I didn't realize the amount of writing there would be. And the amount of writing was a huge amount. I was getting like 200 emails a day, not being able to read all the emails that I was getting through, not being able to write to a quick enough speed. The software that allowed me to really process, because I have a slower processing with reading and writing, that helped me process the information that was on the screen, slows me down because I have to, get the software there. I have to make sure it's reading it out. I then have to process it. I then have to write something back. I then have to get the software to check it. It's a slower process than just, read and write. So I estimate that I'm probably like a third slower than people who do not have dyslexia. And what that meant is, because of the rate I was getting things through, I missed some things because I was trying, rather than being able to see at the speed that I needed to. And that has been an incredibly difficult process. It also meant that it was felt that I couldn't keep up with the work demands. And actually, rather than thinking about having a conversation with me as a person who has as a disability, already finds it difficult to focus because of my ADHD, rather than have those conversations with me, the conversations weren't had, and I felt like I couldn't keep up. Therefore, because the conversations weren't had, the reasonable adjustments weren't there. The reasonable adjustments were like, well, you've got your software. Actually, reasonable adjustments, when we think about them, are there to be able to keep up with my peers. Now, if I'm saying I can't keep up with the amount of reading and writing work that's coming through, and actually the reasonable adjustment that's in is slowing me down, I may be able to process it more, it's slowing me down. And then there isn't a conversation to say, okay, so what does equity look like? What does putting me in a position whereby I can have the same leg up to be on a level of someone without neurodiversity? And if those conversations are not happening, because as a person I'm very articulate, that's been one of my throughout the years. I'm quite well spoken. I'm not a person of colour, so I have that privilege in my life that I don't even think about, that I don't have to explain myself. because I am the, predominant race within this society being the UK. So I think within that, there's an assumption that I will just speak up, or I will just get on with things. We'll just almost put up and shut up until it gets to a point where things are missed. And actually, that's had a really negative impact both on my well-being over the last year, and losing so much self-confidence in, and actually my worth hasn't been seen. It's not that I don't have worth. I have intelligence, I have experience, but in that specific job role, that wasn't brought out. And I think for me, it really brought forward the importance of the support systems around me. I do coaching now, I do other things. So actually being able to see my own worth has been a huge step forward, but one that's taken a really long time. One of the things, thinking about the differences in, because Dom and I both have difficulties, because I didn't have support system around me within the organization that I worked in. I just let it go. And I think the difference, Dom, you had one person that believed in you, and I didn't. In the end, I let it go, and that's meant kind of the end for me. Whereas you did. I'm so proud of you. You did it. You did that thing, carried it through, and you saw it through to the end, which I genuinely think probably is to do with your autism and the fact I have ADHD. As soon as I felt a bit like this feels too hard, I'm out. That was it. And because I didn't have anyone there kind of kicking me down the road, being like, no, you must do this, I gave up and you didn't. And
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to think about, when times get tough, the different ways our neurospiciness have supported or not supported in those environments.
There was a few things that I want to go back and like probe your brain about. So, in the past, in your previous employment situations, what type of support did you receive from your people leaders you didn't receive in the job in question?
So I think there's a combination of factors. So coping strategies work until they don't work. So I was in the same career for 10 years. I just developed coping strategies that worked for me. I was in the same type of job for a long time, and I developed these coping strategies. I would work all the extra hours because the leadership people gave me space to do that. And they saw my value outside of the reading writing stuff. They saw the work that I did, and they saw my other characteristics like my reflective nature, my ability to work with people, my relationship building. They saw all of that. And then me as a person, I would just put in loads of extra hours, which wasn't the healthiest thing to do. But I felt supported in those roles because I felt like my value had been seen.
Yeah.
Those coping strategies that I had developed, there was no amount of hours that I could put in that would have offset, and that the coping strategies I had no longer worked. So it was like everything fell down around me.
I guess there's an element here, and I'm seeing the similarities in the sense of like we've had challenges because we probably work well with, the people leader that gives you space and is not a micromanager, gives you time to be able to process something a little bit longer, is there and actually giving active support rather than going, I'm here if you need me. Because um, like one thing I'm very strong in, not everyone asks for help and they shouldn't expect you to ask for help. They should also check in and be like, okay, I can see you're struggling with this task. Say, this was due yesterday. Do you need any help? Would you like to jump on a call together and we can work through this? Or, is there anything that you don't understand? Or do you need to split the workload? And if they're not doing stuff like that, where they're actively supporting you, then that's where the issues rise, because you and I, we work very hard in our roles, but we also don't normally ask for help. We're like, we've got this. I'm just gonna work an extra 5 hours. Like I've got it. It's in my head. It's just getting out of my head. We'll work all the extra hours, and then when we submit it, we just get, okay, cool. Here's another task, and you're like, fuck. After there's another, like, shit. So we're always behind. We're always playing catch up, and that we're always on the brink of burnout. So just having leaders that allow the flexibility or understand the needs of their employees is quite beneficial for our progression and our worth. And I guess one of the things that I'm learning is not to put my worth, I don't want to say not to put your worth in others, but your job, because if someone makes me redundant or I get let go for whatever reason, that doesn't then impact my personal. And that's something I've been working with our CMO quite closely. Um, one of his things is, like, work is just work. There's always going to be work. There's always going to be issues, and then you have your home life. Don't mix them together. Like, your emotions at work is not your emotions that you carry at home, and vice versa. Like, that just shouldn't impact you as a person.
I don't know that that's true. I don't know that I can agree with that. I don't know that I, as a person, can separate my emotion at work from my emotion at home. If I'm happy at work, I'm happy at home. If I'm not happy at work, I'm not happy at home, because for me, my work and my life is so closely identified together. And if I'm not involved, like fully involved in the work that I do, if I'm not passionate about it, I can't do it. And that's it for me. I do think that is part of my neurospiciness. I think it's probably part of me, you know, being a Leo or whatever. Um, but I think if I'm not passionate about it, I'm not there for it. I can't differentiate.
Yeah, I think in terms of that, I think it's a learning, but it's just also a pinch of salt, because I do resonate with what you're saying, because that's how I generally feel it anyway. Is that if I'm happy at work, I'm happy at home, and vice versa. Like, I'm happy in my personal life. But I think the disputes, like the small things that really piss you off at work, don't let it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think instead of it being this separation, which is never going to work for me as a neurodiverse person, I can't do that. It's a lesson in letting go. It's a lesson in not sweating the small stuff, but knowing when to drive forward with the big stuff. And it's a lesson in having the right people around you. And if I haven't got that, knowing when to jump ship so that I can get that. Because actually, as a neurodiverse person, all of those things, knowing when to let go, knowing when to jump ship, because I'll trug along till the very end of something. I'm like last man dying, you know? And actually, there's a big knowing when to let go, and knowing what questions to ask to make sure I've got the right team that will support me and my neurodiversity.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because I think that's probably the difference between my situation and yours, is that both of us have been screaming and screaming, screaming, um, that we need support, and we haven't been heard. Um, and like, I highlighted that there were microaggressions and all of this, and so basically what I did was I sat down and wrote a 21-page document with screenshots of conversations that I had over the past year and a half. And I guess that's where my autism comes in really handy. Is I'm an elephant. I remember everything, especially if you've done harm to me, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So I did a 21-page document and I sent it to HR because I knew that if it was documented, they can't ignore it. It's a documentation. And one person in HR looked at this and he literally jumped on a call with me. He had never heard of him before in the organization. And first, he asked me, why did I submit the document? And I said, I just need help. I don't want to be anxious coming to work. I don't want to be in this situation anymore. I love the company. I love my role. I love the people that I work with. I have great relationships with everyone. Um, so I don't want to be in a situation where I'm being hindered um, in my role because one person doesn't see my value. I've said that what I need as support, and they uh, are finding a way to make that happen. I requested another occupational health assessment because I had my new diagnosis. So I wanted those diagnoses to be on my new occupational health assessment, what I needed help with. But it also meant that the occupational health could make reasonable adjustment recommendations for my employees to roll out. He very clearly put at the end of the report that I am covered under the Equality Act. So by law, they need to put in measures to support me. And I explained to him and I said that it's caused me a lot of anxiety. So I think that's something everyone should get, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, you should always get an occupational health assessment, even if it's stuff like you're completely healthy, but you get migraines every now and again, you have an injury or something like that, because then it's a form of document to tell your employers that this is a pre-existing condition that you have, or an illness or an injury or something that's going on with you. So if you are off sick for whatever reason, if you have anxiety or depression and that's on your record, then you're kind of protected because the company can't say, oh, you're off for this amount of time, but we didn't know that you suffered from this. And well, you can say, well, I had my occupational health and you know that I suffer from anxiety or suffer from depression, or I suffer from really bad headaches or migraines or like sensitivity. So it's just like having those documentations, um, your conditions documented.
So, in wrapping up, what would be your three tops tips to a neurospicy person, either going into the workplace or is having trouble at work?
Number one will be transparent at the beginning process of your interviews. I always think transparency is key. They can't outright deny you a role because you are neurodivergent, but do highlight your strengths, so they can see how you fit within the business. Have those strengths in mind when they're telling you the problems that they have in their business. You can go, okay, I can do that because I'm great at problem solving, because my dyslexia helps me see and dig. A second one would be always have an occupational health assessment when you start the role. And the third one is what I am building currently is a board of directors. So build a support network within the business. Build allies, so people that have your back, that you can turn to and say, I'm having difficulties with this task. Can you help me? Then have mentors who are people that help guide you through and you can talk to, or um, they can add an extra layer of support, but also just mentor you through your career. And then thirdly, sponsors, so people that advocate for you. Building those relationships is uh, having a chat with people that are in more senior positions to you. Don't be scared to talk to them. They are human. Build relationships with them, because those are the people that will have you in mind when they're thinking of a new role or a new project, and they'll be like, oh, like so and so from that department, they had coffee and we had a nice chat, and they're working on this project and I think they have some great skills and they will be able to advocate for you. So allies, sponsors and mentors, build your board of directors, and they will also be the people that you go to when you have issues that you can't necessarily speak to your line manager about, or if you want to speak to your line manager but you don't know how to say word it or approach it, or they might have a little bit more insight on something that you might need help. They also want to add another one is know the softwares that work best for you and know what you need on a baseline to get your get your minimum needs met. Sorry, I added two more. And for you?
Guess mine is about, so my first one will be around psychological safety. So for me, it's really important that I feel like I can have difficult conversations. So having an environment where I feel safe is really important for me. And I don't mean like physically safe. I guess I mean with people who are going to be able to listen and going to be able to understand, and that I have the space to be able to talk through, get to kind of an unconscious conscious agreement within myself and within, thinking about how to move forward. So have the hard conversations and learn how to have hard conversations. Don't shy away from saying the hard things, because I have found that when I've shied away from having the hard chats, especially when it's about me, and when I've been in fear about, because it's hard, right? Being your own advocate is really bloody hard. And when I've not done that, that's when things have fallen down. And it's scary thinking about the fact that as a person with a neurodiversity, I need certain things that other people don't have, and to then ask for that can feel very difficult. So don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to have the hard conversations. Don't be afraid to put my own needs forward. Um, and uh, and don't give up. Actually, I may not get things right all the time and I may need more support, but that does not mean that I am not absolutely valid with great skills that can bring loads of great stuff to, whoever I work with and for. So having that continued belief is, yeah, my third top tip. And they're all really hard tips. They're not any easy tips there.
You said I think my tips were quite practical and your tips were um, you just went in. They were very, very hard and very emotional. But you said it so beautifully. And I could see how they both intertwined, like having the hard conversations. If you have your board of directors, then you can practice those hard conversations with them and they can help you tweak that to then go and say it to the person that is the scary part. And having that safe space is, your board of directors are your chosen people that you want to share your most intimate work. So those are your safe spaces. So if you have someone that's a cheerleader and loves everything that you do, like you can have those really difficult conversations with them and you feel safe, having those rants with them, and they'll be like, you know what, you're kind of out of line, or you know what, I hear you, and like it's a safe space. So all of our tips kind of like intertwining, and it's kind of nice to see that we're saying the same things out of our own personal experiences and what's needed down the line for future success. And I hope that all of our tips and tricks are helpful for others as well, and it prevents experiencing any any difficulties that we have experienced within our own careers.
Even if there are difficulties, being able to speak up about them and being able to speak up about them sooner rather than later. I think is the
Yeah,
key. Like if like being able to have those hard conversations from day one rather than letting them drag out. And I think that's when difficulties arise.
yeah. And sometimes people don't really see what they're doing something wrong until you tell them. It could just be then like normal behavior, but no one's really told them that, hey, that's not okay. Like, I need help. Yeah. There was a question that I had for you, Serena. What type of softwares do you use?
So I really like Claro. Claro really helps me. I because I need things written out for me. Read out rather than written. So I need to hear information. So I read audiobooks, for instance. I need information to be verbal as well as then written down, because what will happen is verbally I'll process it much quicker, but then my like ADHD brain will be like, oh, okay, that's done, move on to the next thing. So I need I need this verbal conversation, but then to make sure I don't forget what to do, I then need to either I need to write it down or someone else needs to write it down for me so that there's the main bits, like if it's tasks, are then not forgotten. So ClaroRead, if I'm reading emails, for instance, is really helpful for me. View is really helpful. It's helpful to me to consolidate. I have like 100 thoughts, like all the time. I'm constantly like, oh, let's do this thing. Oh, let's do this thing. I've got this idea for a new business, and we're going to do this. So having them all written down, the mind mapping software is super helpful for me to be able to keep track of all of my ideas. And then actually, when I'm in a space where I've got space, I can then come back to them and be like, that's a terrible idea, or this is a great idea. I want to follow this through. How can I get some people on board with me? So that's really helpful. If I'm doing prolonged work, I'm really loving Grammarly at the moment. Grammarly's really helping me in terms of some academic work that I'm doing. And I'm really getting into AI and like the helpful nature of AI. I mean, this is a whole nother, like, let's not go there now. But yeah, AI in helping me sift through ideas quickly, especially ones that I'm kind of struggling a little bit with to kind of focus all together when they're all a bit bitty, like just kind of being like, "Bleh," and then AI just kind of brings it all together. And I'm like, yeah, so that's really helpful.
Yeah, I hear you on that because I think a lot of your softwares are similar to mine. Like, I love using actually use three different AI softwares for different things, but also to like cross reference. So I use Copilot, which is the Microsoft one that you can get that integrated with Teams. So that's really good if you're taking meetings and it takes notes for you. I find it quite difficult when I'm on a call and I have an hour long meeting and then I have back to back meetings. It's very normal for me. So if I have Copilot transcribe and then summarize the meeting notes, and I just ask it to summarize and pull out the action points, that's really helpful. And then I just send it to the team. I also use Grammarly. Yeah, Grammarly is amazing. It also has an AI function. So if you write out what you want, you can highlight it and then it can rewrite it for you in a different way. I use Perplexity for the stuff that you were talking about as well. So, like, if there's a lot of information and you just want to um, consolidate the information and kind of summarize it up because it's just like everywhere. That's a really good one. I also use that for research as well. And then ChatGPT, everyone uses it for the same sort of stuff. I also use Speechify, which is endorsed by Richard Branson, um, and I like it because you can speed it up, but you can also have like different voices. So you can have like Gwyneth Paltrow and Snoop Dogg. You can also put your own voice in
My
there,
God,
so
what
it
does Snoop
sounds like
Dogg read? That would be great.
But it just makes it a little bit fun. Like, what else do I use? I use like Mirror, or my love at the moment is a lucid charts for the same reasons as what you use. Like, if you have loads of different ideas, you can put them on virtual post-it notes, or I love to use flowcharts. So building out a flowchart really quickly just to get that what's out my brain onto something. Um, we have similar softwares that we use, and I use these daily, like even at work, outside of work.
My biggest reasonable adjustment that is not necessarily a software would just be space and time and compassion. If I've got a manager that gives me space, time, and compassion, I'm going to fly way more than, because then the softwares are great and they help with the processing and they help with the accuracy, but they don't help with the time
Mm,
it takes. It will
no.
just take more time as a person with a disability. And I think, we are in a society that values output, 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 and it doesn't value the time it takes the individual to create, and actually saying sometimes we can't always be in that output state. Actually, the most creative states are not output states. The most creative states are the time when you're just having a breath and actually able to think about what's going on rather than at turning out things at 100 miles an hour. So biggest reasonable adjustment. I love all my software. 100%. I would want that. But in addition, time, and understanding that 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 these things will just take more time.
Yeah, that's one thing. Or like giving yourself permission to go for a walk if you feel overwhelmed, or you're trying to focus but you just can't focus. Go for a walk, come back, and then you'll just completely reset. Or if you have if you're problem solving, and or you're stuck on something, and instead of just being with it, just go for a walk, go to the shops, walk around the office, go and get a coffee, whatever. Take your mind off it and come back, and you'll find that you've solved whatever you were dealing with when your mind wasn't on it. Yeah. So, and also, if any listeners have any recommendations of any softwares that they would like to share, please leave us a comment or a little note, so we can share with the wider community. That would be amazing if we could co co-share our findings on useful softwares, or even just not even softwares, just techniques that you use or coping mechanisms that might work. um, but as always, Sabrina, it's very lovely speaking to you. Yeah, I'm very bad at goodbyes.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate it wholeheartedly, as always. And until next time. Oh, well, what are we discussing next time? What did we decide? Or is this going to be a surprise?
Yeah, I got it. So next time we're going to be exploring into consciousness and conscious based therapy. So this is a project that Sabrina is currently working on. So she's going to be telling us a little bit about her project and her plans for the future within this. And it's going to be super exciting. I've heard snippets of it, but like just having a little bit of more of a dive in deep session, and it's really exciting. She's doing some great work. Um,
Thank you. All right. Well, enjoy your. Oh my God, it looks so amazing.
Sitting in the rainforest. It was cool.
Wish you could all be there. So jealous. All right. Well, enjoy. And we'll speak again.
Speak again. See ya. Bye.